about the KASYP participants. So again, welcome. Sorry, start my video. Again, welcome everyone. And then welcome to the attendees and good afternoon. My name is Attorney Marie Gonzalez Molina. I will be your moderator for this afternoon. For this second virtual discussion, a conversation on building inclusive normal in the Philippines and Indonesia. We have a few ground rules. So can we show the slide for the ground rules, please? Is it there? Okay. So I'll just talk about it. So first, we will ask participants to mute their devices, and then even if muted, we still want to hear from you, especially during the Q&A portion. So we will ask you to make use of the chat box function of the Zoom. And please, you can type in your comments. You can tell us where you're from. You can say hello. And also later on, it's here. So here, the chat box. And then if you have questions, especially during the Q&A, you have to type in your questions in the chat box. And we will also be using the chat box for our trivia portion. So during the course, yes?
나도 거의 좀만 더 기다려줘.
Okay. So we have a trivia portion. We will be asking questions. It's not a regular trivia because we will also be giving prizes. So yay. Can we also show the slide for the prizes? So Konrad Adenauer Stiftung has prepared a few prizes for us. These are publications of KAS. So we're giving out 3 books. First is Insight into Asian and European Affairs. The second book is about political change, and the third book that they will be giving this afternoon is Economic Connectivity in the Age of Uncertainty. So please do participate in the trivia. I know there are a lot of students logged in this afternoon. Okay. So I think we have we just had a bit of a delay due to technical difficulties. It's 2:05. So I think we should start formally. So I'm calling this program to order formally, and to give you a formal welcome, here is Mr. Christian Ashley. Mr. Christian Ashley is the director of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung's regional program, Political Dialogue Asia. He is based in Singapore. He is a journalist by training and alumnus of the Foundation's scholarship program for young journalists. Before moving to Singapore, Mr. Ashley was the director of KAS Media Africa, the regional media program for Sub-Saharan Africa based in Johannesburg since 2012. So, Mr. Ashley, good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Marie, for the wonderful welcome. And of course, welcome to all of the speakers and the participants that have gathered here on a Saturday to discuss about the new inclusive normal in the Philippines and Indonesia. I'm very delighted that this initiative of the Philippines chapter of the KASYP alumni was put into reality so that we can meet together here in this virtual space today. By the way, who else felt a little bit, I don't know, shaken maybe when we saw all the pictures from Penang where nobody wore a mask and we were way too close. So yeah, we are in the new normal now. We meet on Zoom and we still continue to discuss issues that are relevant for the region, that are relevant for the development of the region. And as I said, I'm really, really thankful to the KASYP alumni chapter in the Philippines, led by Patrick Asenero, that they came up with the initiatives for this program so that we can meet here today. If you allow, I will share just a few news on the KASYP program, since this is really the platform on which this webinar is happening. We have started our 11th batch at the beginning of the year, and it was a very unusual year, of course, for this batch. We had our first ever online seminar just a few weeks ago, so that went quite well, but still, of course, it feels a little bit strange not to be able to bring everybody together as we usually do for the KASYP workshops. We have new content for the program, so that's also good news. We are focusing more on leadership skills now with the 11th batch, and I think this is something that has started very well. And we are also in the process of identifying the participants for batch 12. The applications are open until the end of the month. So if you know anybody who is interested in joining this program, it's targeted at young politicians in Asia, then please let them know, and they can find the application link on our webpage and on our Facebook page. So 5 more days to file the application. Also, we have a contest going on, changing this year in the back. Oh no, it's here. No, here. So this logo here needs to be renewed. We need to add a few more countries. So there's a contest going on for KASYP alumni to come up with a new logo. And those of you who are alumni, of course, I would like to invite you to join this contest and to see what comes out of it. In general, we had high hopes for this year when it comes to the work with the KASYP alumni. Again, COVID-19 has made things a little bit more difficult for us, but I'm happy that we have this initiative. We have a few other initiatives where the alumni are coming together, and we still want to start the formal network that we kind of set up in Penang last year. So we want to start it officially before the end of the year. That's it for KASYP news. For today's topic, I think you picked obviously a very relevant topic. I think we are now like half a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, and we of course see that questions of inclusion are of special relevance in this situation. We see that the poor, the disadvantaged suffer much more from the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impact in particular. So I think it's an excellent topic that you've chosen today. Unfortunately, Indonesia and Philippines are amongst the countries in Southeast Asia, at least, that are most hit by COVID-19. So I'm really looking forward to learn from your experiences, from your perspectives as speakers. And I hope we will have a very engaged discussion after the presentations. It's really great to see that all stages of KASYP are fairly presented amongst the panelists. So from the very early batches to the very recent batches. And I would like to thank again the KASYP alumni in the Philippines, the speakers who came together today, but of course also my team in Singapore. This is basically a co-production between the Philippines and Singapore, which maybe also explains for one or two of the technical glitches. But Ray Pardit, the program manager for the KASYP program, together with Kismet and Rubia, is running things from here from Singapore. So thank you very much to all of you, and I hope we will have an insightful and interesting exchange today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Christian Ashley. That was a very warm welcome. So for now we will start with our main speaker. So I will introduce to you our first speaker. He will be discussing the rationale, the need, and relevance of people-centered and data-oriented programming and policy making. He is Professor Region Lakibul from KASYP Batch 4. Professor Lakibul is an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science, School of Law and Governance in University of San Carlos in Cebu City, Philippines. He is also an integrity consultant for the local government Integrity Circle Network of the province of Cebu. His advocacies include anti-patronage and integrity building in politics, bridging leadership and political technocracy and local governance and youth empowerment. So good afternoon, Professor Region Lakibul.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Yes?
Yes.
You hear me? All right. Thank you so much, Conrad Adenauer Institute for Young School for Young Politicians, or KASYP, for this great opportunity. It is always inspiring to keep the conversations going, especially with young movers and shapers in Asia. Today's topic for conversation will look into the viability of building inclusive new normal in the Philippines and Indonesia. While the call for inclusivity in all phases and facets of governance can be dated even before the global pandemic, such call for inclusivity is being heightened up and reinforced now more than ever. In fact, studies conducted by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs would reveal the following global realities. First, on the aspect of gender, women are noted to be at the front lines fighting the coronavirus. Women account for 70% of health and social workers. Second, on the aspect of economic growth and employment, it is noted that 1.6 billion workers in the informal economy will risk losing their livelihoods. To date, the world is facing the worst economic recession since the Great Depression that happened in the 1930s. Third, on the aspect of equality, it is noted that the most vulnerable groups are being hit the hardest by the pandemic. By vulnerable groups, we are referring to older people, persons with disabilities, children, women, and even migrants and refugees. And fourth, on the aspect of the environment, it is found out that COVID-19 may result in 6% drop in greenhouse gas emission for 2020. However, this figure still falls short of the 7.6 annual reduction required to limit the global warming. In the Philippines, Asian Development Bank articulated that the country might shed more than 4% of GDP from domestic COVID-19 outbreak. This is on top of the smaller 2% of GDP impact coming from global spillovers. In Indonesia, Asian Development Bank said that despite the country's strong macroeconomic fundamentals, COVID-19 outbreak has changed the course of the economy with the external environment deteriorating and domestic demand weakening. Indeed, there are overwhelming data from the Philippines and Indonesia that we can make sense from. But what is alarming to me are the observations coming from experts. They pointed out that there are governance-related issues in the Philippines and Indonesia as far as handling the pandemic is concerned. I personally believe that the quality of data and people management are key to addressing the said governance-related issues. We need a right mix of manpower and scientific data. We must invest in skills, capabilities, and data management technologies. We need well-trained people who can harness data using science and technology. And so we ask ourselves, how exactly we ensure that governance of affairs is people-centered and data-driven? I think we need to begin with awareness of the goal. We need to be aware that we are all endowed with the right to development. In fact, the United Nations Declaration on the Right to Development considers development as a comprehensive economic, social, cultural, and political process which aims at the constant improvement of the well-being of the entire population and of all individuals on the basis of their active, free, meaningful participation in development and in their fair distribution of benefits. This global declaration recognizes that each one of us deserves to be engaged in the development process, regardless of our race, sexual orientation, color, and even sectoral participation or representation. While we continue to grapple with the new normal, we need to anticipate the challenges in making new normal the better normal. So how then do we proceed? I believe we need to reflect on the quality of governance that we allow ourselves to be subjected to. We ask ourselves, are we engaged in the process? Are our voices heard? Are we considered, consulted, and given opportunities to co-own and co-manage the affairs that affect us? You see, the government is not the only source of data and resources, especially in today's globalizing and liberal society. There should not be a monopoly of expertise and solutions. I think governance is a multi-stakeholder partnership between the government and non-government actors. Governance thrives healthily when stakeholders recognize their limitations and then they proceed in complementing these limitations to the strengths of other equally important stakeholders in a society. Governance needs people, empirical evidence, and a set of guiding principles for it to have better grounding and for it to make meaningful sense in bridging stakeholders together for development. And so we ask ourselves, what are the principles that will guide us in rethinking governance for development? The World Development Report of 2017 recommends that we do not only think about the form of institutions, but we also have to look into the functions that are created with it. Second, we do not only build capacities, but we also have to ensure that power relations are symmetrical, that equal opportunities are provided for everyone. And third, we do not only adhere to the principle of rule of law, but we also have to clarify the extent of roles that these rules are able to create in order to pursue common good or general welfare. We need to be extra cautious and conscious in making our programming and processes people-centered and data-driven. In concrete terms, how do we make governance inclusive, participatory, and evidence-based? I believe the answer to this question is by maximizing the bridging leadership approach. Bridging leadership intends stakeholders to be co-owners and co-managers of their now and future. While the government pulls together its manpower and resources, this whole of government approach must be significantly complemented by the whole of society approach. Now, what is the whole of society approach? It actually refers to a development approach in which multi-stakeholders are actively engaged in decision-making processes in order to implement coordinated measures together. So it is not enough that we depend on the whole of government approach. It's also not enough that we complement this whole of government approach with whole of society approach. I think it is important that we infuse the bridging leadership approach into the process in order to complete the governance equation. Let us remember that people-centered and data-driven governance for development entails clear awareness of the goal, strong adherence to guiding principles, and conscious efforts in bridging leadership amongst multi-stakeholders. That is the reason why today we are privileged to be graced with distinguished representatives from varied sectors. You will be hearing stories from them, their perspectives, their experiences in the ground, so that we can learn lessons from them. And because this is a conversation, I would encourage our dear audience to actively participate in the open forum, because after all, you are equally essential stakeholders yourself. And after all, this virtual learning session is intended for all of us. Let me end my presentation with a quote from John Kerry, the former Secretary of State of the United States of America. He said that it is about time that we frame every issue and every question, not in terms of what's in it for me, but more importantly, what's in it for all of us. Once again, thank you for your active listening. All the best to one and all.
Thank you, Professor Lakibul. So, okay, let's try it. Let's try our first, let's try our game. So we can go to, so later on you can ask Professor Lakibul questions during our Q&A. But for now, Professor Lakibul has a question for you. So this is a trivia question. Can we bring up the slide? Sorry. Is it there? Hold on. Sorry, I have to read it from my, I cannot see it. Sorry about that. Where is it?
It's already being flashed on the screen, attorney.
Yeah, hold on. Okay, here. My screen is just capturing a portion of it. Okay, here, I got it. Sorry about that. So here's the question. It refers to a development approach in which multi-stakeholders are actively engaged in decision-making process in order to implement coordinated measures together. A, wait, before I read out the answers, you have to type in your answer after I say go. So let me read out the choices first, and then I'll say go, and then the first one who types in the correct answer will be the winner, okay? So here are the choices. A, whole of government. B, whole of society. Or C, whole of governance. Go. Okay, so our friends from Singapore are checking. Because there are also some who are typing in the comment section, I think, of Facebook, if they're watching this from Facebook Live. So let's see, do we have a winner?
We have a winner, Marie.
Okay, so let's see. The answer is B, whole of society. There you go. So for the winner, can we announce the winner?
The winner is Donna Angelica Dacha.
Okay, she was taking notes a while ago, so that's congratulations, Donna.
So our team from Singapore will contact Donna Angelica Dacha for the prize and how to receive it. So after this program or after this webinar, we will contact Donna. Thank you, Donna, and congrats.
And also thank you, Ray. Ray is from KASYP Singapore, and he is helping us out together with Rubaya and some other KASYP Singapore members. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's go to our second speaker. Our second speaker will be discussing engaging the CSOs and people's organizations in the Philippines. Mr. Patrick Asinero is a facilitator of civil society and underrepresented voices, particularly young people, to have meaningful dialogue with public servants and effective participation in governance. For 3 years now, he has been working at Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in the Philippines to lead the EU co-funded multi-sectoral local government Integrity Circles Project, or LOGIC. He has a master's in development management from the Asian Institute of Management, and he is presently the elected Philippine country representative of the KASYP Alumni Network. Hi, Patrick.
Thank you, Marie, and good afternoon to all our participants and fellow speakers. So this afternoon, I'm very humbled to represent the CSOs and people's organizations that we have worked with, particularly the Local Government Integrity Circles project across many localities in the Philippines. So I have a presentation, I guess. I don't know if it's already there. Thank you, KASYP Singapore. In relation to this, let me pose two questions that are relevant in my presentation. One is, why is it meaningful to dialogue with non-state actors and to empower underrepresented sectoral voices? And the second question is, why is pluralism, which is synonymous to democracy, necessary and multi-sectoral co-created solutions more beneficial to society? Now, because the Article 2 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution declares, and I quote, "The Philippines is a democratic state. Hence, sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them." End of quote. And in relation to that, allow me also to discuss the three main pillars of Philippine democracy. And let's start reviewing these three pillars. First, on elections. Do we listen to the voices of the people during elections, or do we have personality and patronage based kind of political engagement even after the elections in the Philippines? On checks and balances, are the opposition party and CSO networks very strong enough to articulate well their voices in parliament or even in people's council? And thirdly, on rights, are minority and sectoral rights, particularly indigenous people, women, and even youth rights protected in the Philippines? And so overall, I'd like to pose a question. Is the Philippines therefore a genuine, democratic, and free country? Of course, the Philippines has beautifully crafted national policies that allow civil society to truly participate in governance. In fact, the 1987 Constitution explicitly says, and I quote again, the state shall encourage non-governmental, community-based, or sectoral organizations that promote the welfare of the nation. Even the Local Government Code of 1991 defines who CSOs are and what will be their roles in local governance and even in local budgeting. Now, despite these laws, Freedom House, a political foundation, highlights that the Philippines is a partly free and democratic country. Government transparency remains limited despite some positive initiatives in the recent years. Civil society has been historically robust in the Philippines. However, assassinations of civil society activists have been continuing even until today. And so therefore, if democracy means the power of the people, then why is the Philippines mostly ruled exclusively by educated technocrats and political elite families? Indeed, national legal systems are in place to enable the democratic. However, the voices of many ordinary Filipinos, including civil society at community levels, are often underrepresented, sidelined, or even marginalized. Many CSOs
Are you there, Patrick? So I think he's having a bit of a problem with his device.
sorry, I think I got lost. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
there. It's
Yeah,
okay.
great to be back.
Thank you. Okay.
So as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of laws already that are existing in the Philippines. And so even the 1987 Constitution explicitly says that the state shall encourage non-government, non-governmental, community-based, or sectoral organizations that promote the welfare of the nation. Even the Local Government Code of 1991 defines who civil society is and what will be the roles of these organizations in local governance and even in local budgeting. However, despite these laws, Freedom House, a political foundation, highlights the Philippines as partly free and democratic. In fact, government transparency remains limited despite some positive initiative in the last or in the recent years. Civil society has been historically robust in the Philippines. However, assassinations of civil society activists have continued until today. And so, therefore, the question I would like to pose related to this topic is If democracy means the power of the people, then why is the Philippines mostly ruled exclusively by educated technocrats and political elite families? Or sometimes you call them the political dynasties. Indeed, the Philippines has national. Uh, can you please move to the next slide? Thank you. Indeed, the national legal systems are in place to enable the democratic ecosystem to flourish in the Philippines. However, the voices of many ordinary Filipinos, including civil society at community levels, are often underrepresented, sidelined, and even marginalized at times. Many CSOs do have voices, but how many of these voices are meaningful when it comes to governance? Many of the informal sectors like women, youth, indigenous people are not well represented in local government mandated structures, such as the local health board and even the development council at the community level. If they are represented, CSOs are challenged to effectively articulate their needs and demands. And apart from lacking resources, they're not working as a collective body. Second is that government is not only the one facing corruption issues, but even some CSOs as well. Their public trust are tarnished when it comes to representing the voice of the people. Case example is the Napoles scandal. And because of such, government now requires civil society to accredit and register in the government. This has become a step back for many smaller and even informal groups such as women's groups, farmers, indigenous, and youth groups to engage with government. The third challenge is COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has exposed the deeply rooted inequality and poverty in the country. Many CSOs were not ready to respond with agility and resilience. In many localities across the Philippines, and I'm not just saying even in not only in rural areas, but even in urban areas, many of these, many of the problems that we have already when it comes to the connection or the link between government and civil society has been exacerbated in the past months or weeks. And of course, one important problem also that is faced by many communities is our and civil societies, our internet connectivity. Imagine we are talking already at a national or even here in Manila. I even got lost earlier when I was like sharing my case about civil society in the Philippines. So how much more of if you are in the countryside? So it has become an obvious issue also when it comes to linking government and CSOs to work collaboratively. So if these are the challenges, and if we are facing these challenges, why is it very important to have an open, participatory, and a government that has integrity during and even beyond this pandemic? And why do we need to have civil society as well, who are proactive, as well as having the integrity to work with government and also represent the voice of the people? Our take on this with the local government integrity circle is that CSO needs to be collective because it is a strategic to demand. It's the only way, the most strategic way that we see in terms of demanding government to be more open, accountable, and responsive to the needs of its citizens during and even after this pandemic. COVID-19, or sorry, the Logic Network as a platform is a dialogue platform that is not only pragmatic, but also effective when it comes to government or working with government, but as well as a win-win approach to earn the trust of the public, particularly civil society, private sector working together when it comes to addressing the pandemics and many sectoral issues that we're facing, especially at the community level. And more importantly, Logic Network as a dialogue platform is an effective way to share resources, technical knowledge, and make growth more inclusive across the Philippine archipelago. Remember, the Philippines is not a big one landmass, but it is an archipelago. So we really need to work together and share our resources to reach out to more people across many localities in the Philippines. And so therefore, it is very important, being an archipelago, that we could have more public and private partnerships. Apart from that, it is also important because this platform can help improve peace building in the countryside by minimizing terrorism and any violent political engagement, given that this platform is a participatory governance platform. And so therefore, with those challenges that I presented earlier, and with this experience that you have with the Logic project, my last question that I would like to pose to all of our participants is that, should we still be optimistic of a fully democratic Philippines? And I would say in my lifetime. And my confident answer to that, and may I ask Rubia to go back to the previous slide just to show our experience and our work. Of course, my answer to the question that I've shared earlier, or I've asked earlier, is that it's a confident yes. And I'm speaking based on our experience and the lessons learned that we got from the Logic project here in the Philippines. So this network also has been proven to be a good platform in terms of addressing the pandemic, in working collaboratively, democratically, and having more voices in terms of deciding on what's good in the community. And so with that, thank you for listening and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Patrick. So thank you for sharing your insights on that. So I hope our participants listen. So we have our second trivia question. So I got it. It's ready this time. Can we have the slide, please? So you already know the drill. I'll read the question, read the answers, and when I say go, type in your answer. Okay. So for question number 2, what does I stand for in the Logic Network? A, innovative, B, integrity, or C, inclusive? Go. Okay, so we have a couple of answers. Let's see. Ray, can you announce your winner? So the answer is B, integrity. Can we announce our winner? I think we have a winner.
So we have, we cannot give the prize to one individual. So thank you again, Donna, for being very attentive. You got the answer again correctly, but I think it would be good to give another chance to other participants. So Donna made it correct. She's the first person to give the answer, but I think we'll give to the second fastest participant, and that would be, I hope I pronounced this name correctly, Dian Acelia Ople.
Congratulations, Dian. She is getting the book entitled Political Change. Okay, thank you. So if you're noticing, the panelists have about 10 minutes to give their presentation, and we will focus more on the questions later that you will be asking. Okay. Okay, so our third speaker for this afternoon is from Indonesia. Where is it? Okay, here.
맞아.
He will be discussing engaging the informal sector. He will be discussing engaging the informal CSOs and non-state actors, this time in Indonesia. So Dr. Arias Sandiuda is from KASYP batch 2. He is my batchmate. He holds a PhD in international relations from Istanbul University in Turkey. He also has a master's degree in strategic studies from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. He also has a certificate in terrorism studies from International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research in Singapore. His bachelor's degree is social and political science from the University of Indonesia. He also studied in the Institute of International Relations in Netherlands. Currently, he is a commissioner of Indonesian Information Commission in Jakarta. He is the vice chairman of Red Cross in Jakarta. He has an expert staff for commission in Indonesian National Parliament on Defense, Foreign Affairs, Intelligence, and Communication. And he is the executive director of the Indonesian Democracy Initiative. And also, he put this in his. He told me to say this. He is a proud father of 4. So good afternoon, Arya. Good afternoon, Arya. Yes.
Yeah, Marie, and all the speakers, Professor Patrick, Ray Padit, and all the participants. It is an honor for me to present about how Indonesia tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, especially how the government tried to collaborate, or we can take the term that used by Professor Hu, the first speaker, to bridging between the government and the society. So can I click by myself? Okay. May I? Oh, can I click by myself? The slides? Okay. So these approaches towards the COVID-19 pandemic in Indonesia, actually we modifying 3 approaches. The first approach is the transparent and crucial approach. So it is under the bills number 14 2008, Fasal 10. Each level of the government, both on the central and the district or cities or province, they should be transparent in their policy in tackling the pandemic. So that's why I shows here. This is in Indonesian, but I will translate it for you all. This is a kind of joke, like it's an honor for Indonesia for his achievement. Per 24th September, we have new daily cases, 4,635 COVID-19 positive cases. And it is not a joke, but it is like cynical. Yeah, total deaths, more than 10,000 deaths, and active cases is more than totally 60,000 cases. So next. So the 3 approaches that we combine is the first is the transparent and crucial approaches. The second is the cheap and prompt approaches. It is under the bills Fasals 7, yeah, and the cautious and disciplined approaches. It is under the Fasals 17. So I will explain one by one if you want me to elaborate. But this is the cases that shows from Indonesia. Next. So now daily cases is more than 60,000, including me, because I've spent my days in hospital. Few days ago, I infected by COVID-19 virus. Then I spent for 14 days in hospital. Then more 7 days after get a swab test result negative in my own home isolation. So this is one of the problem that we face. There are only 37% of Indonesian who are staying at home. So more than 60% is not staying at home. They are not loyal to. They're obeying the regulation and also the rules. So it's only 40, not more than 40%, who are staying at home and implementing the strict isolation. So that's why the cases is up to 170,000 cases, especially after July 20. Next. Okay. And we have another new cluster other than office cluster, and there is also church or mosque clusters. We have also now, sadly, we have a family cluster. So these family clusters mean there are many families who are infected by COVID-19, not only one member of the family. So there are 1,515 families who have more than one member who are infected by COVID-19. And the cases of these clusters is very huge. It's 7,411 cases. And next. So that's why it is because the cluster of family is increased rapidly. Then there is a new policy to obligate every COVID-19 patient should be isolated in hospital. So they are not allowed anymore to have self-isolation in their home. So, and this part I will explain the bridging, the social bridging program, or what we call like a large scale social collaboration. So we have a program like social collaboration. Myself is the vice chairman of Indonesian Red Cross, and I'm responsible for this program. So we called to unite in the disaster in the situation of the COVID-19 outbreak to all segments of the society, and call them to participate, to donate, or giving hand by any other means. Next, please. Yeah. So we have a platform, on digital platform. This is a official platform of the government, and this is also part of the transparent and crucial approach that obligated by the Constitution, Pasal 28F. So we shows to the public, shows to the citizen on which area that we have a society who are very much affected to this pandemic in terms of economic. It means the lowest class of the society. We have the map of the lowest class of the society who are affected economically by COVID-19. Next. And then after we determine a specific location, Next, please. Then we give some alternatives to the citizens or to the society or to the any group, any government, any institution who want to donate. So we give them choose alternatives, which one they want to assist, which package they want to assist. So there are some options. Next, please. Okay, this is the illustration of package value requirements, and very details. We should mention one by one the items and how much the price, so we can transparently responsible to the public. Next. And the third part is complete the collaborate commitment form. So both sides, both government and society who are committed to this collaboration program should be signed to the commitment. Next. Okay, next. Coordinate and distribute an assistance to residents in need. Who doing this is the Indonesian Red Cross. Okay, the impact of the collaboration is this. Okay, the number of receiver of the social assistance. Next. And next, please. Okay, this is the number of collaboration types, and yeah, and we always updating the next. We always updating the map of the number of collaboration and the number of social assistance receiver. Next. Okay, this is the map of Jakarta, for example, the capital that affected most in Indonesia. Next. Yeah. Okay. Next. Okay. Okay. This is the last slides. Is the partners who collaborating. They are government, private sectors, and society sectors, and also individuals can join. So and using Indonesian Red Cross, voluntary and other humanitarian institution. Okay, the last slide. Okay, thank you. So this is the time of crisis. So it is wise to build bridges while the foolish build barriers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Arya. And we're happy that you survived COVID, and we're happy that you can join us this afternoon. So we're going to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Nas Donding. He will be speaking about engaging the youth and women sector in Mindanao. Mr. Nas Donding is currently working at the Bangsamoro Youth Commission as Chief of Programs and Operations. He is also a fellow of the Konrad Adenauer School for Young Politicians, Batch 10. Outside of government work, he's doing various voluntary work, specifically in peace building and political democracy. And he has political democracy advocacy, such as being the vice chair for Mindanao of the Young Centrists Union. He is the founder and chairman of Peace and Politics Alliance. And two others, Nas is one of the youth champions in Mindanao, particularly in BARMM. Good afternoon, Nas.
Yes, good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. May peace be with us all, and warmest greetings from the side here in the southern part of the Philippines, which is the Mindanao. And I'd like to greet first everyone a happy International Day of Peace 2020. For the whole month of September in the Philippines, we're celebrating it as the National Peace Consciousness Month. As I start, to our ever energetic and active head of the KASYP Singapore and the Conrad Adenauer School for Young Politicians, Mr. Christian Etchle, my fellow speakers this afternoon, Attorney Hasmina, Mr. Patrick, Professor Regine, and our dynamic moderator right now, si Attorney Marie Molina. Our friends from both from the Philippines and Indonesia and other democratic and non-democratic states who are joining us in Zoom and via live Facebook. Good afternoon, and may we be all safe this time while being challenged by the global pandemic. I just want to have a very brief description of the Mindanao, which is I will be exploring to you this afternoon. As you know, Mindanao is the second largest island in the Philippines next to Luzon, where the capital is found in the Philippines. This is the massive island at the foot of the Philippine archipelago, in many ways the cultural heart of the country. A place where indigenous tribes still farm the ancient homelands and Christians live alongside with Muslims who first settled here in the 14th century. Contrary to popular perception, most of the island today is peaceful, friendly, and stunningly beautiful. To consider as well some challenges that we are facing right now with regards to peace and security matters. As you are aware of, the very known issues that we have here is the peace and security, and now additional to our big challenging issue in Mindanao is the COVID-19 pandemic. Going to the general context of my talk this afternoon, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an immediate global ceasefire to ensure life-saving aid reaches the poorest and most vulnerable in conflict areas across the globe. Yet violence continues, such as the series of earthquakes that has epicenters here in the island of Mindanao. There are series of bombings, most specifically in the province of Sulu in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Series of killings in both North and South Cotabato, the mortal shellings and continuing firefights in Maguindanao against operation of the government against the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. And of course, we have this pandemic and many more other. In connection with this, I would like to highlight some thoughts and data from the new humanitarian latest published opinion and newsletter that was recently made for public consumption. I would like to start with women and youth must play a meaningful role in shaping the agenda, both in response to the coronavirus and also in building a lasting peace. Imagine having to choose between fleeing your home, risking exposure to the coronavirus, or staying put and possibly getting caught in a crossfire. This is what people in parts of Mindanao in the southern Philippines are facing, as conflict and violence during the COVID-19 pandemic forces communities to confront this unacceptable dilemma. The experiences of people in Mindanao, especially women and youth, show why this is crucial. The Philippines, particularly here in its southernmost region, has long been plagued by conflict between the government and armed groups, as well as banditry and clan feuding, or it is called locally RIDO. This is worsened by extreme poverty and the threat of various hazards, from typhoons and earthquakes to frequent floods and even volcanic eruptions. There are some, in figure, there are some 370,000 people displaced by intermittent conflict and disasters in central and southwestern Mindanao. That's according to the United Nations latest documentation, and these numbers are rising despite government-ordered coronavirus lockdowns that have mandated movement restrictions and curfews in many communities. Another data that's shown by the UN that at least 26,300 people were forced from their homes in the first quarter of 2020. As we remember, the pandemic started in the Philippines. The official declaration of national emergency is March 16, 2020. That's mainly by clan feuding. Families have also fled hostilities between government forces and the members of the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters, or the so-called BIFF, in particular in our area. Mindanao's displays are caught between conflict and the coronavirus. Some families must evacuate up to 3 to 4 times a month. They return to their homes to gather food and harvest crops like bananas or coconuts so they can earn a living. By nightfall, they return to their evacuation centers to rest rather than risk staying at home, only to be awakened by gunfire or explosions in the middle of the night. In under-service evacuation centers, one shanty usually houses 2 or 3 families. There are limited bathing and hand-washing facilities. As many as 70 families might share a single toilet. Access to health services, extremely limited even before the pandemic, is now completely disrupted. Now, the threat of COVID-19 looms even larger for families on the move. This should be a stark reminder that no one is safe until all of us are safe. Just as communities are the first line of defense to stop the transmission of the COVID-19, community-level peace building is the first line of defense for conflict-affected areas. It is really exploring as of the moment that the things that we have been doing for so many years are still the things that we need to do. Even at this time of pandemic, we still need to bridge dialogue, discussions in order to facilitate the less effect of the coronavirus together with the other areas of issues that we are facing right now. There was an immediate ceasefire in the Philippines. That is a critical step towards ensuring an effective COVID-19 response and building an inclusive, lasting peace in the region that has seen decades of conflict and multiple peace attempts. The Philippine government, as the government as a whole in the country, is now increasing efforts to support and build local capacities. That includes among women's rights and youth-led organizations, so that community groups already on the frontliners of crisis can better mobilize and own the COVID-19 response. In BARM, in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, we are glad that it is very timely that the Bangsamoro government has recently established the commissions of youth and women focused on these issues, especially in these times of pandemic. There's also lots of mentioning the gender perspective, that it is needed to ensure response operations that do not reinforce discrimination or enable impunity and violence to thrive. Failure to account for the different needs of women and youth can lead to inappropriate and even harmful responses, such as neglecting to include menstrual hygiene items or failing to provide sexual and reproductive health aid and counseling in evacuation centers and displacement camps. While amidst this difficulty, we have seen also many good practices from both the government institution and community-based organization. As we see, everyone is very active as of the moment in addressing, though I think many observations saying that we do not really have yet the clear roadmap where to go to end up this pandemic. But we see, for example, here in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region, the Bangsamoro Youth Commission, where I am currently working, there are series of activities that we are entering into to support our Bangsamoro youth constituents. One of them is the Lingkod Kabataang Bangsamoro, where the regional government provided relief assistance to the most vulnerable young people in every communities of the BARM, including the 5 provinces of the region. In some areas, in some region of Mindanao, the Sangguniang Kabataan are very, very engaged as well. We've seen lots of efforts in the Caraga region, in Davao del Norte, Davao de Oro, specifically the SK, are very active as well in helping and in shaping inclusive policy formations in their respective communities. And as a truly inclusive COVID-19 response should encompass the different needs of women and youth, the homeless and the displaced, the indigenous peoples, the people with disabilities, the PWDs, and the other groups with certain vulnerabilities, failing to address lots of grievances that we still have right now, injustices against the Bangsamoro, for example, the socio-economic disparities, discrimination, and the disenfranchisement from political processes will allow conflict to spark anew. Women and youth must play a meaningful role in shaping the agenda, both in the response to the coronavirus and also in building a lasting peace. As a last statement from my side, as long as the unrest continues, the Mindanao Island displays will continue to be trapped between two unviable threats, and that is the conflict and the continuous effect of the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic in the Philippines. Once again, good afternoon, and we hope that you get something from my presentation, most specifically on the role of the young people and the women's sector in the island of Mindanao. Looking forward to have conversation with the other participants that we have this afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu.
Thank you, Nas, and happy International Month of Peace to you as well. So I'm happy to introduce a lady for our final speaker. She will be discussing engaging the environment sector. Attorney Hasmina Paudak has been practicing law for more than a decade and runs a free legal aid clinic. From her law firm background on general litigation, she came to Greenpeace Southeast Asia Philippines as its legal advisor and currently leads the Philippine legal team's Climate Justice and Liability Program, specifically working with various stakeholders and employing creative strategies to mainstream climate justice in the consciousness of Filipinos and institutionalize it in the government system. She finished her law studies at San Beda University. She has a master's in development management at the Asian Institute of Management. During both times, she was a full scholar and a consistent top notcher, and she is also part of KASYP Batch 9. So, good afternoon, attorney.
Good afternoon, Marie. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. A pleasant afternoon to everyone. And it's nice to see familiar faces again. Thank you for the opportunity to give some insights on the importance of putting our environment at the core of the government policies as we build a better normal post-pandemic and share with you Greenpeace Philippines, my organization's humble contribution to this quest. I hope I will not bore you being the last speaker. I'll try my best. Next slide, please. Weeks after the country was placed in strict community quarantine protocols in March, we've seen a dramatic positive change in the quality of air, especially in the metro. This gave us a glimpse of what would be like with the clean air. Unfortunately, just weeks after the government relaxed the quarantine protocols to allow industries to operate to salvage our declining economy, and having more vehicles on the road, we've seen an immediate rebound to the same level of smog and air pollution. This sliding back is foreseeable as Philippines is still heavily reliant on climate destructive and polluting fossil fuel energy sources. In a recent report released by Greenpeace Southeast Asia and the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, entitled Toxic Air, the Price of Fossil Fuels, air pollution generated by burning of fossil fuels is attributed to approximately 4.5 million premature deaths worldwide every year. Again, that is every year. Let that sink in. In the Philippines, an increase of 500 infections of COVID, not even deaths per month, is already alarming. Further, according to the report, air pollution increases the incidence of chronic and acute illnesses and contributes to millions of hospital visits and billions of work absences due to illness each year. In the meantime, in the Philippines, the total cost of impacts attributed to fossil fuel-related air pollution is between $2,500 to $6,000 million. Again, that is in $1 million. And the estimated premature deaths in 2018 is between 11,000 to 20,000 people, it certainly does not only wreak havoc on the environment and people's health, but likewise a substantial damage to the economy. Next slide, please. This air pollution is just a fraction of a bigger and more devastating picture of what will happen should we only have a myopic view of responding to this pandemic. I'd like to argue that this is not just a health crisis, and if we'll refuse to take a holistic approach to combating it and continue our business as usual attitude in policy making and implementation on the ground, then we'll experience frequent pandemics and more destructive problems which will disproportionately affect the world's poorest and most vulnerable sectors. And according to the Global Climate Risk Index 2020, published by the German Watch, the Philippines ranked number 2 of the most affected by impacts of weather-related loss events in 2018, and ranked here number 1 on the list of countries facing the highest risk of climate change hazards, according to the Global Peace Index, released by the Institute for Economics and Peace. Just imagine that. We are consistently topping the list for the wrong and deadly reasons. The bigger and more devastating picture that I'm talking about is the climate crisis. Pandemics usually have a timeline, a year or so. When we are able to find the appropriate vaccine for COVID-19, for example, we can somehow go back to normal. But with climate change, there is no going back, because science informed us that when it comes to carbon dioxide emissions, once emitted, it stays there for a century. And the warming of the planet will not only bring about frequent pandemics, but will cause catastrophic impacts, disrupting and destroying the entire ecosystem and affecting our basic human rights. The recent 5th edition of the United Nations Global Biodiversity Outlook Report puts us on notice that the continued degradation of the environment is increasing the likelihood of devastating diseases spreading from animals to humans, like the coronavirus. It gave us an authoritative overview of the state of nature worldwide and highlighted the links between unprecedented biodiversity loss and the spread of disease. The report also showcased the significance of biodiversity in addressing climate change and recommended that actions to protect biodiversity is crucial for averting future pandemics. This gives us all more reason to seriously take steps and put at the center of government policies decarbonizing our economy by electing renewable energy sources and rapidly phasing out fossil fuels. Next slide, please. Should we only look into the economics of this pandemic and not considerably thinking greening our system and our recovery plans, another grim reality and a monstrous catastrophe post-pandemic will be the plastic pollution. With current restricted mobility, we've all seen a significant increase in single-use plastics brought about by food delivery service, online shopping, use of disposable cutleries when dining in, and disposable masks and PPEs. All of a sudden, the long efforts and continued battle against single-use plastics and greening the system were down the drain. This even exacerbates the already challenging problem on solid waste management. I need not tell you the dangers of this surge of single-use plastics, which do not fully disintegrate. Having at least 500 years of lifespan, clogs water and river streams, eaten by marine animals, which later move on to the food chain and are now linked to negative health impacts. Just imagine this. One disposable plastic straw just for your one drink, you say, and 5 billion people having that similar mindset. That is just one straw. That is 5 billion plastic straws in just one day, for example. Now imagine that and crunch the numbers in terms of wastes. Next slide, please. So what can we do? There are many ways. In Greenpeace, we do not subscribe to the convenient and lazy excuse that there is little that could be done because we are in a pandemic. For us, activism is essential to building back better, to building a better normal, because the old habits that we had brought us to this deadly pandemic, the new normal that we are in. To echo our country director's statement, what we need is really a coherent post-COVID recovery agenda that clearly articulate plans for future-proofing the country against other crises. protecting the environment, phasing out coal plants, and aiming for 100% renewable energy, weaning the country away from fossil fuel transport, addressing the waste crisis at its root through plastic and waste importation bans, among others, leads to positive health outcomes that will make the country resilient against future pandemics. The Philippine government and perhaps all governments worldwide need to genuinely appreciate that safeguarding the environment translates to securing the rights of people, especially the vulnerable ones, to life, health, livelihood, and the right of present and future generations to a healthy environment and a stable climate. So what is Greenpeace? Greenpeace is an independent campaigning organization that acts to change attitudes and behavior, to protect and conserve the environment, and to promote peace. We are present in 55 offices worldwide, and we work directly with communities on the front lines as they protect the environments they call home. In pursuing our mission, we have no permanent allies or enemies. To maintain our independence, we do not accept donations from governments or corporations, but of course, individuals will do, but rely on the contributions from supporters and foundation grants. Greenpeace will be celebrating its 50 years of existence next year and has just celebrated 20 years in Southeast Asia. For 5 decades, we've promoted open and informed debate about society's environmental choices. We use research, lobby, and quiet diplomacy to pursue our goals, as well as high-profile, non-violent, creative confrontations to raise the level and quality of public debate. In the Philippines, we recently launched our Better Normal project, where we showcase smart, green, just, inclusive, and sustainable ways forward post-pandemic. You can visit our social media accounts for more details. And other than our plastics, oceans, mobility, and smart cities, food, clean energy campaign, we are also heavily campaigning on achieving climate justice, and that is where my area is. And what is this? The call for, next slide, please. The call for climate justice is actually seeking accountability from those who largely contributed to fueling the climate crisis and forced the rapid phase out of fossil fuels. Did you know that more than 60% of global anthropogenic or human-induced carbon emissions were significantly caused by just 90 entities? Yes, 90 entities, 50 of which were investor-owned. And we, Greenpeace Philippines, along with 13 other nonprofit organizations and 18 individuals that is 32 petitioners, we filed a legal action against these carbon-polluting corporations such as Shell, Chevron, Exxon, Total. But due to corporate mergers and acquisition, the number of respondents was reduced to 47. Now, a favorite narrative that was utilized and echoed by these carbon polluters is that everyone is responsible for the effects of climate change, thus no one can be held accountable. This view, however, failed to consider the responsibilities and obligations of those who have contributed the most to this climate crisis and profited from it. To know more about it, I'll share with you later on in the Q&A portion and the links. Now, to conclude, we cannot afford to suffer more. This pandemic is an opportunity for our government and all governments globally to seriously take action to mitigate the climate crisis, which is far more devastating than the pandemic, to put people at the center of planning and decision-making and encourage people participation as opposed to silencing legitimate criticisms to attain a better normal. Let me share with you one of the longest banners Greenpeace has utilized and which sums things up. When the last tree is cut, the last river is poisoned, and the last fish is dead, we will discover that we cannot eat money. Thus, we have to act now, and now means no opportunity wasted. We have to shift our mindset, to shift our behavior. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Attorney Hasmina, for that very passionate discussion about the environment. And I hope that your case goes well. Wait, we still have one more trivia. Yes, we have not forgotten about that. So our next, are you guys ready for the trivia? Apparently, I'm the one who's not that ready. Hold on. Okay, so our next trivia question, our last one is, which topic of environment concern was not discussed? A, climate change. B, air pollution. C, ocean acidification. Go. Everyone's answering so fast. Hold on, almost like less than a second apart, I think, this time. Ray?
Yes, Marie. Yeah, they're so fast. It's so difficult to what's this? Capture the first who answered, but we were able to get it. So congratulations to the answers. Sorry, I have to reveal the answer first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't announce the answer. Okay, so the answer is
Letter C,
letter
ocean
C,
acidification.
yes.
So congratulations to Emil Condiniera for answering first C, ocean acidification, and we will contact you for your book prizes. So congrats, Emil.
Congratulations. And thank you for joining our trivia. And also congratulations to our panelists for giving very good discussions this afternoon. So we're moving into the meat of our program. This is the open forum. I hope you guys took notes and you're ready with your questions this afternoon. I think we have a few questions already. Okay. Let me ask the panelists if they're ready. Are you ready for the questions? Just give me a thumbs up. Ready? Okay. So for our first question is directed to Attorney Hasmina. The question is, you mentioned your case. You mentioned filing a case a while ago. What is the significance
Yes.
of the legal? Yes. What is the significance of the legal action that you filed, and what do you expect from that?
Thank you for that question, Marie. Yes, the significance of this case or this legal action, if I may correct it, this is the first ever climate change related complaint submitted to a national human rights institution and the first to actually be fully accepted by a human rights commission and to have completed the proceedings. We are just waiting for the resolution. Hopefully it will be released anytime soon. And also, this is the first to implicate a huge number of private actors. We have 47 big coal, oil, gas, and cement companies. Usually, climate cases, as you will learn from other readings, that they are filed against states and they are looking into climate policies and law. But this one is against private actors, and this is the first human rights body to have conducted public inquiry hearings, not only in the Philippines, but we also conducted hearings in New York and London to be closer to the hubs of some of the carbon polluters, giving them an opportunity to actually participate in the investigation. And for this one, Marie, we hope that the findings of the commission will hopefully lay a basis for the Philippine government to issue policies declaring climate emergency and our legislations related to climate change or using the human rights lens. And of course, hopefully other governments, like for example, Indonesia, can be inspired by this declaration and follow suit. Thank you, Marie.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Hasmina. Thank you, Attorney Hasmina. You mentioned some links a while ago that you will share with us. Maybe can we maybe ask you to type it in the chat box so the others may view it after after this virtual discussion. Is it yeah.
Yes, already available.
There you go. Thank you so much. Hold on. So we're checking for more questions. Hold on. Here. Okay, we have one question here. This is addressed to all panelists. So whoever wants to answer first, just go ahead. Here. Hold on. After the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, did you feel your respective governments were more inclusive or less inclusive in decision making? So maybe just raise your hand if you want to be heard first. So this is addressed to all panelists. Okay. Yes, I see Patrick.
Yeah. I guess that's a very interesting question because everybody is saying that the pandemic is a new experience to everyone, especially for the government. In the case of the Philippines, I could say, and this is I'm speaking in behalf of my experience and our organization's experience in terms of working with civil society on the ground. Um, it has been a challenge. It has become more of a challenge of having, like, I could speak in behalf of local governments to work with civil society as well as people's organizations collaboratively compared to before COVID-19. One particular instance is before COVID, civil society and any informal organization, whether they are registered or whether they are or not a registered organization at the local government unit, can easily go to any local government office. But because of the pandemic and because of the lockdowns and the limitations of movements, a number of our civil society partners were having a challenge in terms of even communicating with our partner local government units. And then the other thing that happened also, even if they tried to communicate using online, connectivity here in the Philippines is a big challenge also. So in cities, or even I would call it municipalities in the rural areas where there were series or a number of lockdown during the first few months of the pandemic, it was a challenge for civil society to approach and work with government. And then at the same time, a number of them were not even included during the planning sessions. Like, for example, the special program of government when it comes to like supporting those vulnerable sectors. But eventually, I think the government also has learned in the process. So recently, the government has tried to open and trying to become more inclusive when it comes to partnership with different sectors and trying to address their issues and concerns. So I would say it's really a learning curve for all of us in terms of trying to be more inclusive and trying to reach as many voices when it comes to planning and implementing programs to address the different issues of our citizens. Yeah, so that's my take on that question.
Thank you, Patrick. Since this was addressed to all panelists, can I have one more panelist maybe to answer the same question? Maybe Professor Lakibul, please.
Right, thank you. I would agree to Sir Patrick that this really is a challenge and that we are learning from this new normal. But I'd like to point out that there are a number of pieces of evidence that the government is really looking at the whole of government approach. In fact, it has been harping that kind of approach in all its policies. And I think that there is a disconnect to some extent on the policies that were created by the national government. And these policies do not necessarily reflect what are actually happening on the ground. And so I think that's the area that our national government has to take into account. So as you can see, on an institutionalist point of view, the national government has set a direction that it will maximize whole of government approach. But I think that to include all other sectors in society, I think it needs to be complemented with whole of society, because the government does not monopolize and must never monopolize knowledge and expertise. In fact, there are way better technologies, data management technologies that we can maximize in order to address this pandemic. So I think it really is a challenge, but there are a lot of areas that we can learn from. It's just a matter of the government's willingness to accept the matter of fact that it cannot be the solution for everything, that it needs the private sector, the non-government organizations to work hand in hand so that we can move forward, as Attorney Hasmina has mentioned earlier, move forward to a better normal. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So we'll move on to the next question. This question is for Dr. Arya. I will read the question. For Indonesia Red Cross, is your government strict on the implementation of health protocols? Does your government impose penalty to violators?
Yeah, the law enforcement approach is implemented by the security actors like police officer, not by Indonesian Red Cross. The Indonesian Red Cross is working on the humanitarian realm. So we mobilize the volunteer. We have around, for Jakarta, we have 2,000 volunteers. That those volunteers is working to delivering the assistance package, and also to make some social campaign to transforming the new behaviors to make the society more disciplined towards the health protocols. So the penalty is there, but it's not on the Indonesian Red Cross, but by the police officer. Like if you in Jakarta, it is not generalized in whole nations. It is only in the province who are as we define as a red area, like Jakarta, the highest cases. So if you are unwearing your mask, then you'll be punished directly by the police officer. Yes, that's one of the example. But the reality, 60% more than 60% is violating the rules. So that's because the penalty is not so hard. It's only not so high.
I think we have a similar situation here, and but it's the problem later on will really be if you get infected or not, right? I think that should be the major consideration of everybody. So
Right.
thank you, Arya.
Yeah, Maria.
So our next question is for Attorney Hasmina. Does Greenpeace coordinate with hospitals and other health-related institutions, considering the surge of plastic use like PPEs, test kits, and syringe?
The brief answer to that is yes. Greenpeace is actually not only coordinating with hospitals or health institutions, but in different stakeholders. We also coordinate with the government. We also coordinate with an NGO sector, and even engage with the corporations in terms of calling them out. So with respect to health institutions, many hospitals or health institutions, we partnered within our webinar series for our Better Normal. We've invited a lot of experts to help us actually to educate the people about this surge in plastic pollution, and to look into what are the ways that we can actually avoid this. And for us in Greenpeace, incineration is not a system. The incineration that is being actually advocated by the government will only give us it is a bad solution. That they're trying to make it like a waste of energy solution, but it's not. The toxins that will be emitted in the process of incineration will actually cause more devastating health impacts. So yes, that is my brief answer to the question, and thank you for that question.
Thank you, Attorney Hasmina. So the next question is for Mr. Nas Dunding. The question is, what course of action does BARMM government take during the emergence of conflict amidst this global pandemic, especially concerning the youth and the women sector?
Um, I, I think on my part, on our on the regular basis that we see, most especially in those the RIDO cases, the Barm government together with the provincial government has been arranging amicably the issues. No, they are bringing the parties together. They talk together and they discuss matters. I think it's working as of the moment since the Barm started its journey of last April of 2019. So just recently here in the province of Maguindanao, I think this is together with the province of Maguindanao, there are a series of feuds issues that were settled, no? And in terms of the other combatants of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, all of them are being supported by the leadership. That's the leadership of the MILF. At the same time, the majority leadership of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Nas, for that. The next question here is, hold on, I'm looking for it. There are a lot of questions. Thank you so much to all the participants for sending a lot of questions today. The next one is for, again, for Arya. The question is, sorry. Okay, I think this can be answered by, let's have this answered by Arya and also by one from the Philippines. The question is, how do people in your countries think about Chinese after COVID-19? After COVID-19,
Yeah.
since it is said that COVID-19 is from China.
Yeah. So firstly, the negative sentiments of Indonesian people is rising towards Chinese people, including, I think, since the first outbreaks in Wuhan until now, I think. So, but now it is not only about the perception of where this virus came from, but also about the treatment of how both countries is handling the COVID-19, because Indonesia is very different in terms of political system. They can approaching their society with a very repressive approach, but while we are Indonesian democratic country, we cannot approaching the society with the repressive approach. So we choose the another approachment, like to pushing the government to implement the transparency and try to invite the society to participate and try to increase their awareness to implement the rules. That's the things. And the thirdly, Indonesian focus is now diplomatically is approaching China to cooperate in vaccine cooperation or vaccine diplomacy. What we push is the affordability and the accessibility of the vaccine. If China already produced the vaccine in the near future, I think those three. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Arya. So does anybody from the Philippines want to answer the Philippine response to China? Professor, yes?
Yeah. I think a number of Filipinos are very cautious with their comments towards China, considering that no less than the Philippine government has pretty much good relation with China. And you have been hearing about a number of opposition cases that have been silenced. So there is a command coming from the national government, and they are being to monitoring people with their comments and what have you. But I think that the Filipino people, there are also a growing number of groups activist groups that are trying to let the other people know of what the problem is all about, like where the pandemic is coming from and what we can do to address this pandemic. So yeah, I think Filipino people are a little cautious because there's some barrier there on the national government's part, as far as trying to monitor the what the Filipino peoples have to say, and maybe protecting also the relationship it has established with the Chinese government. So yeah, cautious. Yeah.
Yes, it's that's putting it mildly, I think. But yeah, we're very cautious. Okay, so the next question is for Attorney Yasmina. Is it true that the Kyoto Protocol is ineffective? If it is, how can our government impose environment-related policies if even an international agreement cannot be followed?
Okay, that is a very technical question for those who are not really familiar with the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol is actually an international agreement that aims to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions and the presence of greenhouse emissions in the atmosphere. Basically, it says that the industrial nations needed to lessen the amount of their CO2 emissions. It was amended in Doha, I think, and the emission target was at the time by 2020. And then there is the new one is a Paris Agreement. When the Paris Agreement now is that to keep the global temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase. Now, with respect to the question of ineffective, I cannot say that it is really ineffective, because currently now countries are becoming more ambitious. The international, not all systems are perfect. The international duty of cooperation is still being being called to be strengthened. Even if we do have what you say is quite a failure in that lessening the carbon emissions, what I think is that we still have to be strong in our ambitions nationally. It is not an excuse for our government to be laggard on our own climate ambitions. It is not an excuse, especially that we are cited and we consistently topped the list for most vulnerable country to be impacted by climate change. So I think we don't have to be lax on that system, even if other countries may be laggard in pursuing their climate actions. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Attorney. Okay, so this next one, first I'll read the comment and then ask the question. This is, I think, also addressed to two or three of the panelists. So first, Philippines has been considered as the deadliest country for environmental defenders. It's the comment. And then now the question is for civil society organizations. How do you ensure effective collaboration from the government and other aggrieved sectors? And two, how do you address red tagging or internet trolls? I can see that Patrick is ready. Yes, Patrick?
Yeah, for the first question, I think it's very important for among different sectors, especially government and civil society, to really open up doors and talk. Because what had happened during the pandemic, or even now that we're having this, a lot of like a lot of a lot of these lockdowns and even like restrictions in movements and even mass gatherings, that people are working now in silos in terms of working collaboratively. When I talk of collaboration, aside from opening up and sitting down and communicating, whether you use online or in areas where it's allowed to have an in-person or face-to-face, then that would be better. The other thing that I would like to highlight is really to also talk so that we could avoid redundant programs and save resources and use those resources in areas where it's really needed. Because what's happening now, a lot of our organizations are not even talking already. Some are doing or working in silos. What's happening is a number of the programs that we're doing are in redundancy, and at the same time, we don't anymore. I'm not saying like totally, but in most areas or in most cases, there is less of sharing of resources and expertise. So I would really advise our partners, our fellows from both government and the non-state actors to really work or open up and communicate and work together. And then most importantly, I would recommend us to be more effective is to become more agile. Right now, every day should be taken a different case, like, but it should be addressed in a strategic way. And when I talk of agile, and organizations needs to be agile, and the people within those organizations, especially our organizations where we're working at, we need to localize also different experiences and the way we address this pandemic. And when I talk of localization, it should be based on context and based on the needs of people. And then the last question is about trolls. Maybe the best way is to really avoid the internet or social media and really contact. If you have, like, for example, our participants who are here today, if you have concerns and issues in your locality, you find ways to contact or communicate with your local government or maybe any organization that you can join with, the advocacy that they're having right now, or maybe any social service delivery work or humanitarian response work that they're doing, and communicate with them directly rather than. It's good to share your anger, your frustration online, but sometimes it only exposes you to these trolls, and it would be a very unproductive way of really addressing the problem. So I would advise, especially our millennials who are here today, if you have concerns in your locality, try to communicate or find a way to contact your local government, maybe a local civil society that you can work with, and maybe collaborate, whether you do an advocacy, maybe fundraising, or maybe helping a fellow person or fellow citizen in your locality. So that's my two cents of input or sharing when it comes to how to address this pandemic collectively or collaboratively and very more effective.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. There's a follow-up both on the first question and on the second, but I'll go to the first question first. I think more or less you answered this question. They're asking you about the strategy to employ, what is strategy to employ to improve local governance in the time of pandemic, and to elaborate on this strategy.
Yeah, I would highlight the work that we're doing at Konrad Adenauer, the project that we are having right now, the local government integrity circles, because we are somehow present in 164, to be, if I'm not mistaken, 164 local government units. And the way we're doing this, it is still a learning curve for us. We're offering platform where local governments together with civil society. I'm not talking about national-based civil society because a number of them, they have a lot of resources at their disposal. What I'm talking about, civil society here are the local-based or community-based organizations, because a number of them are struggling right now. So what we've worked with is trying to support them in terms of how they could reach out to government, as well as government also can reach out to civil society and sectoral representative groups so that they could really talk. I think what's lacking right now is for people to open up and talk and discuss strategically what we need to do when it comes to addressing these pandemics, because I'm pretty sure we could really learn a lot in a lot of areas right now. There are a lot of good experiences and stories also on how to address effectively this pandemic. So that's one thing. So for those people who would like to connect with us, you could also I'll share later our Facebook link, and then you could always share there, message us if you wanted to connect with your local government. But the challenge with this program that we're working right now is it's limited only to 164 localities. It's not present in all 1,700 more or less local governments in the Philippines. So there's still a need to do more when it comes to collaboration and really working hard when it comes to demanding from our government, especially local government, to really help us address this pandemic in effective and inclusive manner.
So, Patrick, sorry, last follow up. So quickly lang, you think that the LGUs are more effective than the national government in addressing pandemic-related issues?
That's a very tricky question. In some areas, the local governments who have a number of resources, like in particularly cities in the Philippines, they have a number of because like the way local governments work in the Philippines, particularly cities, they have resources that they could use with like in responding to this pandemic. The challenge is for many of our local government units, particularly those third class to sixth class municipalities in the rural areas, they don't have that match of resources. And that's why really I was advocating that for us to move forward, for some civil society who have a number of resources, it's good to share or co-share resources and work together to address, and even expertise to move forward and address this problem. When it comes to national government, the national government of the Philippines has a lot of resources at its own disposal. The challenge right now, as mentioned by Professor Reg earlier, is there is somehow a disconnect between national government, and I think this is something to do with our political structure also, with national government and the way our individual local governments are working. Some of them are not working in a very effective manner where they could avoid redundancy, and they could avoid also like they could be more effective in the way to approach this problem. So I would say both. Both, it's a challenge, and in some areas it has been positive.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. So the next question is still related. So I think this is directed to all panelists. What do you think is the best response of the government towards this pandemic? And I will address this, I guess, to everyone, including for both Philippines and Indonesia. So first, who's ready to give an answer?
I think, yeah.
Okay. Yes, Professor.
Right, thank you for that interesting question. I think it's a matter of us understanding what's the structure of the Philippines. We are actually having a unitary form of government. To a greater extent, the national government has control on even the decisions that are going to be implemented at the local level. So I think the national government needs to trust the local government that they can find solutions that are more inclusive and very much responsive to the nuances that are happening on the ground. If you try to look at our interagency task force for the management of the COVID pandemic, it's actually lodged there at the national government. And there are, interestingly, a lot of examples that we can cite in which their policies and decisions that they have created do not match or did not respond or is not representative of what's happening there on the ground. And so what happens, they need to revise it, they need to come up with further amendments to it. So I think trusting the expertise and the localization of the local government units is the first thing to move forward. Because there are a number of resources that are readily available on the ground. So the national government must be willing enough to trust the local government unit and willing enough to extend any forms of help to bridge the gap that are existing, particularly on the aspect of governance. And secondly, I think the national government needs to be very careful in its communication plan. What's the development goal? What's the development plan of the national government? And how is this articulated and communicated to not only the non-government organizations, but also the local government unit? So if the local government unit and non-government organization understand what that communication is, and they have the same, projection on what the goal will be. So I think the governance gap there will be addressed. Two things, trust, and then of course making the communication clear and responsive to the local nuances. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lakibul. Now, maybe one more answer from the Philippines before we go to Indonesia. Nas? Nas, would you like to answer the question? Yes. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, okay. I think I would really agree with Professor Regino because the type of the government that we have, it is democratic as a whole, but the central control is still in the national government. We've seen, particularly, I think in Mindanao, for example, we've seen lots of LGUs who are really doing their best in addressing the pandemic by all means that they have. So I think there is really a need also for the national government to lead the situation accordingly, since the power is really in the best of the national government. So if there if there's a challenge on that note, but we really trust the national government that there is, I mean, there isn't enough understanding of the situation, and there isn't enough plan that the LGU can get directives from the national level.
Okay. Thank you, Nas. So now we'll hear from on the side of from Indonesia.
Yeah, for Indonesia, I think we are now entering the scenario of uncontrolled pandemic because, in terms of healthcare capacity, the healthcare infrastructure is not enough to accommodate all the COVID-19 patients or the infected peoples. And on the other side, also next month, I think the Minister of Economy already declared that we are going to enter the recession. So it means the social collaboration is really will be our top priority to handle all. Otherwise, we will extending the uncontrolled pandemic periods. Okay.
Thank you, Arya. There's a comment here about also about the shift about technology, and then that in their experience in Singapore, there's more demand for laptops and internet service for needy families, and they're also asking about the experience also of maybe in the Philippines and Indonesia. Can you give us a quick answer on that, Arya, before I ask?
As I said, we are entering the recession. It means we even have a very high dilemma in terms of choosing which priority between health and economy. So it really depends on the society to collaborate and to help themselves, and how a government can raise the trust towards the society is only we cannot using the repressive approach. It's only the way like implementing the transparent data and doing the campaign to about the health protocols. So let's see the situation, but I think the vaccine will be the game changer.
So
in December. Yeah.
What there's a comment, Arya, regarding what you said, because they're saying that in the Philippines, the solution seems to be waiting for the vaccine to come out. Yeah. Is it the same, more or less the same in Indonesia?
Yeah,
or?
same.
Okay.
It's same.
Thank you, Arya. So we are so grateful for all the questions. There are a lot of questions. Okay, so we're just gonna ask 2 more questions because it's already 4 p.m. But anyway, we started about 5 minutes late, so I think we can handle 2 more questions. Okay, this one, may I ask one panelist to answer this? What are the opportunities you see should ASEAN countries enter a synergy and having a collective and cooperative response on the pandemic? I think it's a very good question. So who wants to answer that?
Okay, I'll try to address that, Marie.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the way I'm seeing this is the same as our approach, or that the approach that we're trying to learn here in the Philippines. We really need to work collaboratively, but we should work beyond governments. As mentioned by Reg earlier, when we talk of ASEAN, what I'm seeing most often, even in the discussions, is that the discussion is somehow limited among or between governments and governments. But it's good to have that as a start, that we could like work among governments by sharing our experiences in terms of how we're able to address the pandemic and how we're able to do like even as simple as contact tracing. We could share experiences on that and good practices, and even the technology or technology app that we're having in each country, whether that's in Singapore or from Vietnam or maybe Thailand or even from Indonesia. But for me is to move forward, we need to be more inclusive in even at the ASEAN level. Let's all remember that there is a CSO committee at the ASEAN level, or civil society and people's organization committee at the ASEAN level. Let's try perhaps to maximize and use that in a way in terms of trying to have government work with the other non-state actors to really work together and address this concern. And maybe a way also to move forward is to create more platforms where this kind of inclusive discussion and even sharing of resources, sharing of expertise among different sectors, and even sharing of good practices, whether it's in the government, civil society, environment, and those other sectors that we have at the ASEAN level. It would be a good, as well as an effective way of trying to work collectively in addressing this problem.
Okay, Professor Region has something to say.
Yeah, since we're talking about data-driven programming, I think it's important that we make data open, because open data will help inform what decisions we will make moving forward. And so if Asian countries are able to institutionalize open government partnership and also make sure that their civil society organizations are truly functional and given the opportunity to take up spaces in decision making, I think that would make the entire process more inclusive and participatory. So open data is also necessary. How willing are the governments to make this data accessible and available to the public, so that the public will know where to situate themselves in terms of their expertise and where they can contribute to the grand plan of moving forward for the better normal. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I agree. I agree, Professor, with that. Okay, so we just have a few minutes. So I would like to ask each of the panelists to answer this final question. The question is, what are the indicators determined from your offices to ensure that the work you do positively contributes to peace or pandemic response specifically? Would you like to start, Professor Lakibo, since you're already on the screen? Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. That's a very interesting question. Three things. Number one, I think, and I'd like to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that we have the data, and we have to make sure that these data are readily available and accessible, so that the people will have an idea and understanding that they still can contribute to the decision-making process. If the people do not know what is it that they will contribute because there are no data to inform their decision, I think there's a gap there. And second, we have to be very conscious on how we move forward as far as governance is concerned. The Philippines case is that the national government has been harping the whole of government approach ever since, and it's been institutionalizing that for quite some time. But then it has to recognize that the whole of society approach also is equally important. But as an advocate of bridging leadership, the framework of bridging leadership will complete the governance equation. So for me, we need to bridge leadership all across multi-stakeholder stakeholders. And third, I believe the people should not be scared of activism. Activism is not equal to opposition. We need activism because only then that the government can fully realize that maybe it has gaps, maybe it has failed to do something. So the government must be reminded that the people has the will, the power to shape discourses and to inform decisions in the process. No less than Article 2 of our 1987 Constitution recognizes that the sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So, who would like to share their thoughts next?
I can go next, Marie.
Yes, Attorney Yasmina.
Sure, because Professor Regine gave me that good intro. Activism is really essential to building back better, to building a better normal. And this is the right time for the government not to silence legitimate concerns. But specifically for the question on indicators for our organization, Greenpeace Philippines, we look into the number of how many people we were able to engage the different sectors. We try to be inclusive. We only not work with civil society organizations or nonprofit organizations. We are actually active in working with LGUs, both and also at the national level. We can have we look into how many policies or bills or resolutions that we are trying to submit. And in fact, with Greenpeace Philippines, we are very active. As I mentioned earlier, we are also research driven. We are also good in lobbying. So we conducted several webinars to educate. So that's, we are a campaigning organization. So that is one of our aim, to educate the people, to make them aware of the current environmental concerns that we have, that is not only temporary, but can have devastating impacts later on. So we also not try to engage corporations. So we call out corporations if we see that they do have these business practices that are not really aligned to building a better normal. For example, just recently we have called out Lazada and Shopee during the 9/9 in order to actually look into their ways on how their business model should also look into that they add to the plastic pollution. So in terms of indicators, I think we do it by the numbers on how the policies that we hopefully able to lobby with our both local and national, and the number of the youth and millennials. We are targeting Gen Z and the millennials because we believe in the power and the power of the youth in bringing about change. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, Attorney Yasmina. So who says? Patrick?
Yeah, I want to go next. Yeah, I agree with the two previous speakers in saying that dissenting voice is good for democracy and it's good for the Philippines. And I think it's good also for Indonesia. So I would like to put that forward. When it comes to indicators, one of the indicators that we are looking at in terms of with Conrad and as well with Logic Project is we're not afraid in terms of having more CSOs locally based or community-based CSOs, as well as informal groups like women's group, youth groups, and indigenous groups to be part of the bigger voices in terms of being part of governance. The second indicator that we look at also is when it comes to localizing our programs, we try to organize the more integrity circles that we have. And when I talk of integrity circles, it's not only government, but there should be the other side, the non-state actors being part of governance. And we look at that as a very important ingredient when it comes to looking at whether we are successful or not. And then we make sure that the voice that they have there, it's meaningful and it should not be just they are there as observants in terms of the processes. So that's one big area in terms of indication that we are successful in what we do. And then thirdly, we look at partnership, more public-private partnership at the local level when it comes to having more private sectors coming in and redistributing the wealth here in Metro Manila to other parts of the country. Because what's happening right now, 80% of our growth is only, or the GDP is only based here in Metro Manila and its nearby regions. We wanted to bring jobs creation and economic growth, more inclusive, especially in the countryside. And last but not the least, in terms of peace indicator, we make sure that many voices, or especially dissenting voices, should be included in governance. This is a way, or a strategic way, of minimizing, if not ending, terrorism as a platform for political engagement, and I would say political disruptive and destructive type of political engagement. And the way we look at this is to move for our democracy to move forward is really to create a platform where voices are heard but are taking part of when it comes to governance and not as an outsider of governance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Who's next? Nas, yes?
Yes, I think in terms of the indicators that was asked in a while now, I have at least siguro 5, but these are very small thoughts that's in my mind. First is the sense of the inclusivity. I think it's not I think, but that's really should be the importance of inclusivity in all the processes, in all the decision making, that we have to secure that the women are there, the young people are there, the PWDs are considered, the special needs of every vulnerable people are considered. And the second one is I am looking forward to see more established coordination mechanism between our government, the LGUs, the national government, the regional government, and the civil society organizations. Because I think this is really the time how to further work out together as one nation in order for us to survive this pandemic. The third one is I think there's really a need for us to focus on the pandemic. Everything that we do, the realignment of the allocation of funds in both the governments and the civil society organizations, there is really a need to focus on the things that we can support in helping the people that are being affected by this pandemic. The fourth one is the public transparency and trust. It's very important because we have to let the people know what is going on. Where are we heading? Where are we going into? No, we really need lots of initiatives that the people can see that the government is working, the stakeholders of communities are working. It is not that we are just waiting for the vaccine. At least we're doing something while waiting, or at least thinking out within us what are the things maybe we can also have our own. At least I think that only for Philippines and Indonesia, but the ASEAN country, if they could innovate something that is related to the vaccine, or they can formulate their own vaccine, because I think the capacity is enough for the ASEAN countries to do work hard for that, and not just waiting to the big countries to provide us those vaccines. And the last one is we really need to put in our mind that building peace above all through this pandemic is very important, through democratic processes, democratic participation, and democratic approaches. And from my side, that would be all. Thank you so much, Attorney Marie.
Thank you, Nas. Okay, so for the last one, I think we have Dr. Arya.
Yeah, 3 things I think to conclude. First is the transparency of the government in terms of their data of COVID-19 affected peoples, the number that will increase the awareness of the society. Also, the map of the low-class society. So in the social collaborative program, we can invite all the stakeholders to assist them. Then the second is the the cautious and disciplined approach to, and so it means the indicators is to increase the degree of the awareness of the society to implement and implement, and the health protocol. But this part is very not easy if we say it, in the reality is really not easy. So it means the third indicators that we need is the prompt and cheap approach, prompt and fast help. So that's why we collaborating all the stakeholders to help the low class, so they can survive until the pandemic is over naturally. I think we I don't like this term, but I think for Indonesia we are in the herd immunity scenario. It is not so good to say it, but I should say this. Okay, thank you, Mary, and all.
Thank you, Arya. So those were very, very good points. So instead of hiding in this pandemic, we should go out and work with each other. So thank you so much for all those answers. We are sorry if there are questions that we weren't able to address or if there are comments that we missed. We are very thankful for the attendees for staying with us. We're over time already, but thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. And I think there will be more forums like this, right? So, okay. So to give us the formal closing for this afternoon's activity, I will introduce. Okay, it's here. So our program manager. So Mr. Ray Padit is the program manager for political cooperation under the regional program Political Dialogue Asia. He is mainly responsible in managing 3 portfolios, namely the Konrad Adenauer School for Young Politicians, or KASYP, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Young Political Leaders Caucus, KASYP LC, and the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung Election Bridge Asia Pacific. So, Ray?
Thank you so much, Marie. And in my role as the program manager, so I would like, I should not forget before we end this activity for your evaluation. So I would like to request our participants to quickly answer these 5 poll questions to give us an idea on how we fared with this session. So I'll be launching this poll now, and you can just choose which best describe the session today. All right, so we have launched a poll now. So for all the participants, you can give us your feedback on the overall webinar, how relevant were the topics, how are the speakers in the webinar in terms of their effectiveness in giving you the information. And of course, how do you rate the hosting of the webinar and other topics that we are asking from this evaluation questions. These are definitely important for us so that we can improve our future activities and we can become more relevant in terms of the kind of topics that we offer to the public and of course to the KASYP alumni. So maybe while the poll is ongoing or in progress, so as a final word, I think it's worth it to extend the time for a little bit of 20 minutes to really discuss and answer these important questions. And I would say that there are no complex problems, there are no effective solutions that we can find without starting a conversation. So this is the objective of the KASYP virtual discussion series, to really jumpstart conversation about common problems and at the same time discuss or converse about solutions that might be working in Indonesia, in the Philippines, and in other settings or contexts, so that we can learn from best practices and be effective leaders in our own communities. So with this, I would like to say that thank you so much to the members of the KASYP Alumni Philippines chapter for initiating this second session on a conversation on building a new normal in the Philippines and in Indonesia. So thank you so much with the leadership of Patrick Asiniero, the representative of KASYP Philippines National Chapter, to Attorney Hasmina, to Attorney Marie, to Professor Region, to Nas Dunding, and of course to Dr. Arya. We really are appreciative from our team here on behalf of our director, Mr. Christian Eshle, Kismet, and Rubia. We thank you for providing us this opportunity to again be, I would say, significant to all our stakeholders in providing this discussion. But of course, most of all, this event will not be effective without the participation of all who attended this seminar or online discussion. So far, I would say this is the most attended online activity that we have. More than 50 participants. We are not used to this, so we maybe have to improve and upgrade our capacity in being able to accommodate more participants from the general public. So thank you for all who joined us this afternoon, and congratulations to Donna Angelica, Dian Acelia, and to Emil Condenira for winning the trivia quizzes. So our team will communicate with you on how to proceed with the delivery of your prizes. So once again, maybe if there are some last few words from our director, Christian, sorry, ask you again this.
Sorry, I hope the sound is okay. Yeah, so thank you so much also from my side. It was really a very interesting afternoon, very interesting topics that were discussed, and I also have to see a very engaged discussion. I think we also saw that all of our speakers are really passionate about what they are doing in the different sectors that we discussed today. And I think that, to me, always is also the magic of the Konrad Adenauer School of Young Politicians. We have people who've been with us for the last 10 years and who've now entered very interesting careers in different areas. Not all of them political, quite a few of them political, but also in other areas, academia, security, environment. And so, yeah, it's really wonderful to see that variety of talent and careers that comes out of the KASYP program. And I would like to thank you once again for being with us today, to you, the speakers, for the excellent presentations, but also for the audience, for the wonderful interactions that we have. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. But I think before we close, we also have to take a picture, right, Ray?
Yes, thank you so much, Christian, for the final words. And I would like to request everyone for the panelists to open their videos. Okay, so we can have, yes, of course, Rubia and Kismet, you can join us, definitely. This will not be, of course, possible without your support. Great, so 1, 2, 3, smile. All right, thank you so much. And to the rest of the participants, enjoy the rest of the day and goodbye. And we hope to see you in our future online discussion series. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. But for the speakers,
bye, everyone. Thank you, Kismet and Rubia.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye, Christian. Marie, bye. Asmina, Professor Regini. Bye. Nas. Patrick.
Sorry, there's Arya. A moment.
Commander.
Arya,
okay.
We have assessment.
Okay. Online feedback before we close this for the panelists.
Okay. Who is Kismet?
Thank you, Rubia. Kismet, thank you.
I think we have to turn off the FB Live already. They're still live.